Tonight on the Bigfooty podcast, we talk all things Melbourne Footy Club related with Higgs Boson. We ask, is the bump dead? And Messenger sinks the boot into Adam Goods. All this and more coming up on the Bigfooty podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the second of our Big Footy podcasts. With me tonight, I have Messenger.
Hello.
whose voice apparently hasn't broken this week. I've got Chief.
Hello.
I've got the old Dark Navies.
Bonjour.
And I've got joining us tonight, special guest Higgs Boson.
Hello.
And I am, of course.
This is just you making up a whole heap of voices, isn't it? There's not even anyone else here.
In what may be the worst intro ever to a podcast.
Do it
I
again,
am the
Joel.
Wookiee, guys, and we're going to get straight into it tonight. What were your standout moments from the weekend? Anyone?
Well,
All at
mine
once?
was, I'm a little bit biased, but mine was the Andrew Walker goal in the first quarter of the Carlton St Kilda game.
Here.
And it was all downhill from there, unfortunately.
How about you, Messenger?
Well, I actually enjoyed watching Magic Door. I actually enjoyed that. I didn't think he had it in him, and I was wrong. He's got a future. I think he's probably going to be a ruckman long term, but he's got a future.
Excellent. And what about you, Chief? Any highlights from the weekend?
Well, as I said, yeah, I'd agree with the Walker goal. Fantastic.
And Higgs Boson, you got anything that stood out from the weekend?
I'm a Melbourne supporter, so no, I've got no highlights. In terms of lowlights, maybe I'll give you Colin Sylvia. Fair elbow that was. Highlights, though, look, I was pretty impressed with Dorr. He's a pretty ripped specimen and looks like he's going to be pretty good.
He does, doesn't he? I think mine was, well, look, I've got to go with Sean Hampson kicking a goal in the last quarter and basically sticking it up everyone that was booing him all game. But that's me. That's my
That's terrible. He's great, Sean Hampson.
That is my personal bugbear for the week. And
Seek professional help.
And every week, I think. Better than that frickin' Stobie pole with the hand on it that we use in the middle of the ground. Anyway, moving on. I guess the first big topic of the week we're going to look at is the Melbourne Football Club. I mean, it's fairly obvious. They have some issues there on and off the field.
Some issues.
Yeah, I'm understating this for effect, but the Herald Sun are reported last week that they're expecting a $1 to $1.5 million loss this year. They've got some coaching issues, they've got some player issues, and what we wanted to do tonight is specifically get some Melbourne people on to talk about it, which is where Higgs Boson comes in. But guys, how are you seeing the Melbourne Football Club at the moment?
I actually watched the second half of that game against the Gold Coast, and it was staggering. It was unbelievable. I'm almost lost for words as to how bad they were. I couldn't fathom it. I could not fathom it. I'll give a little bit of credit to the Gold Coast. They're cohesive and they've got a plan, but they couldn't stick a tackle. They don't know where their teammates are running, and yeah, I mean they just seem to lack all cohesion out there, Melbourne. It's dreadful.
Look, from a Melbourne perspective, it was incredibly disappointing. It was just a horrible performance. I mean, the week previously against Carlton, we lost, but at least there was a bit of effort shown there. I mean, the first quarter, and I got very angry. I'll give you the hot tip. There was just nothing Melbourne could do, and I mean, look, bearing in mind they didn't have a forward line, that was pretty clear. They'd get the ball, they'd kick it in long, there'd be no one there to get it. But it was just a terrible performance, and I must say the whole attempted tackles stat, it's one that, you just got to wonder what that means.
it's not a very good performance indicator, is it? When it outstrips actual tackles about 5-1.
Well, when your possessions are far behind that of the opposition, you'd think your tackles would be up there. And look, we had a lot of attempted tackles, but the fact that Gold Coast, a bunch of kids were walking through those tackles, it really isn't a very good sign at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the way forward then? Like how do they improve their position?
Well, it's a good question. It's a difficult question. Look, I've always been a disgusting optimist with this type of thing. I start every season...
Dirty optimist.
Well, just disgusting. I struggle to believe that we're as bad as the performances indicate. Clearly, we're shit. There's no doubt about that. I thought that Mark Neal would, in his second season, would really show some results. I mean, you've had he and Neely came to the club saying how unfit the players were, how clearly unfit they were, not up to AFL standard. There was a season to get the fitness into them, leaving aside any AOD cream. And they had a season to learn the game plan. So I thought, no doubt they're going to be better this year. And, clearly the circumstances haven't shown that. I was of the view that a lot of it was confidence. Confidence is a funny thing. You only need to lose a little bit of confidence for the whole thing to go pear-shaped really quickly. And I was hopeful in that manner that I usually am that the 12-goal last quarter against the Giants would tend to reboot the thing, but well, clearly that hasn't happened. And you can only wonder what that means and what Melbourne are going to do to get out of it. And I don't think you get many Melbourne supporters saying positive things about the club at this stage.
Higgs, can I just ask you? It seems that ever since the loss of Jimmy, and on top of that, the tanking investigation and sort of that went on and on last year. It just seems to have, Jimmy was the glue, and it's all seemed to have come apart since he went, and it just seems like everybody's giving up.
Yeah, look, I refuse to believe that anyone in the club is giving up. But your comment about Jimmy being the glue, I think, is quite a good comment. Look, let's make no mistake. Melbourne, as a club, have experienced some of the worst external things of any club in recent times, in my view. There's been a whole host of things over 2012 and now starting 2013 that, a club, in 5 years, you wouldn't have half as many things go wrong as have happened for Melbourne. But I think that the measure of a club, or one important measure of a club, is how it can stand up to those sorts of things. And I think that clearly Melbourne have shown that they're, if nothing else, very brittle. So, look, it's a difficult one. I think that given Peter Jackson's comments recently, the exit of Schwab has got to be a good thing. I think if we can get the structures right for the club, then that's got to help. But you've got to shake your head. I don't know how anyone can really provide any answers. I think that Mark Neal, he's had success at Collingwood, but he's come into Melbourne, and albeit he's had a dreadful 2012 with external things happening, what do you do? It's a really difficult question.
I'll tell you, one of the things that won't be happening is Paul Roos won't be going to Melbourne anytime soon. He was adamant on Tuesday night on the couch that he's not interested in the job.
Look, the main reason I'd like Roos at Melbourne is to get him off the bloody commentary.
He's slightly arrogant about it, isn't he?
Well, him and Lethal commenting Brisbane. It's all very well if you go for the team, but if you're a team playing against them, and particularly if you're losing like Melbourne traditionally does, my God, it kills you.
Higgs, one of the things that's been alluded to by some commentators about Melbourne is that the Mark Neal's game plan is too complicated, that the players haven't actually got a grasp of what it is that they're meant to be executing. Do you see? I can't say I understand Melbourne's game plan, but do you see any credence in that?
I can't say I understand Melbourne's game plan either. But come on, let's be serious. We all know that players aren't rocket surgeons, to coin a phrase, but come on. It's modern day football. It's not a kick it as long as you can down the middle. There are tactics involved, and if players can't learn that or don't want to learn that, well, I wonder if that says a bit more about the players. Look, I say that without any real understanding of what the game plan is or what it should be, because we just haven't been able to execute it. I do think that part of that is confidence, because once you lose the confidence, you're second guessing yourself, you're not running to the right spots, you're playing for yourself, and it all goes to the crap house pretty quickly. But to say, the game plan's too complicated for the players to learn it, I don't buy that at all. I just don't buy that. Collingwood had Neil as the midfield coach, I think. I didn't see anything wrong with the midfield in Collingwood the year before last.
Is it a personnel problem, Higgs? Do you have the right players for the job? And I only ask that because, at Carlton, we got a lot of draft picks over the years, and a lot of priority draft picks, the same as Melbourne did. And it's taken us a long time to get anywhere, and we're still not we're still not at the top echelon. So, is it a personnel problem for you? Is it the way it's been drafted and recruited, or?
Look, that's really a good point. People tend to have a view, and my brethren at the club, have perhaps been, might I say, a little bit guilty of overhyping our young players. But the truth is, you get a young player into the club, no matter how good they are, it's going to take them 5 years at least to start becoming an influential player who's going to influence games and win you games. Melbourne have had a host of players coming through, and I think that, I say again, I've been quite disappointed in how bad we are, because I think we're now at the time where those players should start to becoming good, but they're not. There's a whole host of factors in that, but that they haven't come good. Is it a personnel issue? Well, I think it's well known that Melbourne have failed to develop their players well. And again, that's something that I'm prepared to give Mark Neal time in respect of, because he's been there for a year and a bit. The players were incredibly unfit when he came to the club. It's no wonder, in my mind, that they've had trouble developing the players in the atmosphere that existed previously. So I think that there is scope for players to continue to develop under Mark Neal. Don't understand me to mean that Mark Neal will definitely be there after this year, because I don't think he will. But I think that, it's only been recently that environment has been put in place to allow them to develop. So let's see what happens. I don't know what the answer is.
So do you see hope on the horizon? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel for you?
No. The light at the end of the tunnel is the train coming the other direction.
So it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better? Or?
Look, it's hard to see how it could go any further down, but I've no doubt that out of any teams in there, Melbourne have got the capacity to bring that up. I think that there's no quick fixes. I've come to accept that we're a lot crap than I thought we were, that we're going to be crap for a long time. I just don't think there are any quick fixes. And, adding to that, I think that I doubt that Frawley will be there next year. I've heard some whispers about that, and he doesn't look like he wants to be there.
He doesn't.
Sylvia, free agent. I'm not sure if he's unrestricted or restricted, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was gone. And again, that's experience in the club that is not there. Granted, we'll have some salary cap room to pay for people should they want to come to the club, but I'm sorry I can't bring better tidings, in my view, for Melbourne supporters. There's no quick fix out there.
I've got to say, watching the Carlton game against Melbourne last week, I was impressed with guys like Garland and Frawley. Garland was outstanding, I thought. If I could take any player out of the Melbourne side, I'd have grabbed Garland in a heartbeat. But, very few other major performers.
It's a dearth of leadership, really. If you and I mean experienced leadership. So
Yeah, that's right.
You sort of, when you lose your McDonald's, and obviously they've moved on, whether Green retired too early, or getting rid of Maloney went to Brisbane and stuff like that. So if you start to lose those leaders for whatever reason, whether they were part of why you weren't progressing, whether they just wanted out, I'm not sure. But very hard for those young blokes to come on with those experienced blokes at the club. So I'm not sure if it's the leadership, or whether you've got a case of the tail wagging the dog a little bit, and the players possibly cost Bailey his job, and possibly, if you believe some rumours, are looking to cost Neil his job. So it's just a matter of somebody having to say, well, enough's enough. You guys aren't performing, so you don't get to choose your coach. So
Yeah, look, there's no doubt there's a lack of leadership there. There's no doubt at all. And it's a big ask to have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old or whatever it is to lead the club. I mean, these players, as good as Grimes is, and as good as I think Trengove can be, they're no Wayne Carey. Having said that, of course, I think it's a furphy that often comes up on Bigfooty that Melbourne have got rid of these experienced players. Well, we have, but a lot of those players I don't think would have added much. Bruce going to Hawthorn, he did stuff all there. McDonald, he went to the Gold Coast. Will be a good coach, but he was never going to give much more. Of course, that I think was the main mistake out of all of them that we made. Maloney, well, he chose to leave. I've heard that he as was said, I think on SEN by Rivers, that they were very disenchanted that they were dumped from the leadership group, and well, there's probably something in that, and I think that was probably a mistake. A lot of the players that were experienced that have left, I don't think would have added much. But having said that, without that experience and that leadership, it leads to a very brittle club, and I think we're seeing that with Melbourne.
I think one name that hasn't come up in that discussion there was Brock McLean. As Carlton people that Odin and I are, I mean, we're quite familiar with Brock McLean pretty much playing out of his skin for the last year.
He's been good.
I'd imagine Melbourne would have been able to find a spot in the 22 for him over the last couple of months.
Yeah, look, there's not much doubt about that. Brock, I'll be honest and say that when he was with the club, he was one of my favourite players. I've got a photo of him with my family in the Demon mascot outfit at the Junction Oval at a family day one day, and I had a lot of time for Brock. I did wonder whether the game had passed him by, but I think he's proven that wrong. And he would provide that grit, that leadership. I don't know the circumstances behind Brock leaving. I do recall being happy with us getting pick 11 and getting Gisberts, but again, that's the disgusting optimist in me coming out. Gee, that went well, didn't it?
Yeah.
Higgs, there's a couple of younger guys that had some years put into them, Bennell and Morton and Pettit, and they've all been moved on and are either on rookie lists or playing senior football. And in their place, you had older guys like Shannon Byrne and Chris Dawes. And do you have a view on that? Do you see that as a regression, or is that just trying to rebalance the list?
I think that the theory behind it was sound, but the execution probably hasn't been great. Now, Bennell, look, he never really showed much. I did not have a great deal of time for him, although, there was a few things he did. Morton should have been a star, but is a complete spud, lacks any sort of heart whatsoever. I was really disappointed in the D's getting rid of Petard in particular, Martin as well, because I think that, I don't know why that was, but certainly who we've had to come in to replace them, you'd hope the replacements are going to be better than those they've replaced, but the replacements are worse. They're far worse. Dawes, I'm very happy with that choice. I know a lot of people are critical of it, but I think that in terms of structure, he'll be good, particularly when Mitch Clark comes back. I think that at the very worst, he'll take, a very good backman and will provide, as I say, a much better structure for the forward line. Burns, well, I quite like Burns. I think he'll be a good player, but I think he's probably well past his peak. He's played well in 1 or 2 games this year, but gone completely missing in others. So, good clubman. Can provide some leadership off the field. Same with Roden, but really, let's be honest. They're not going to, and Mark Neal knew they weren't going to take us to the next flag. That's obvious, but I don't think they're even going to do what he hoped they would do. So I think that the idea behind the trades is probably a good one, but the way it's been carried out is proving at this stage to be unfortunate.
Okay. Before we move on, if you could say one thing to Melbourne people to give them just a little bit of hope for the year, what would it be?
Gee, that's a difficult one. No, look, I do think I'm convinced that we do have some good young talent on the list, and it takes time for that talent to come together and to gel. But I think that we have a lot of players of a similar age, quite young players, but who are slowly starting to get those games together. I think that eventually, well, I hope that eventually that will click. Those players will have the experience they need to come together in a cohesive unit. And I think that, look, it's difficult for me to be optimistic as with any Melbourne supporter after the year we've had this year. But I do think that once those players get it together, we continue to develop the players together. I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel, to coin a phrase. I must say, though, I'll put a caveat on that. I just hope that we're not so bad this year that the carcass is picked over at the end of the year. Players like Frawley, Sylvia, etc., that could set us back.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. We've got to move along, and I understand that was a somewhat difficult topic for you there, Higgs Boson, but thank you very much for your input on that.
Yes, very welcome.
We're going to move on now. We're going to discuss the bump. Is it dead? Is it not dead? Is KB right in telling us that we should forget the hysterics? Is Joel Selwood right? And I hate to say anything good about a Selwood, but, he's saying the bump is dead on Twitter. What do we think, lads?
I think it's dead's probably over emotive. You can still bump, but it's not worth the risk.
It's pretty terminal.
It is exactly. It's not worth the risk because you can't foresee. I noticed Goddard on the weekend with a Kelly bump. He had his knees slightly bent. Kelly, I mean, just tiptoes on the ground, one leg at least, but he's copped extra because he's left the ground.
The other thing to say about Kelly, he ran past the ball to do that.
Yeah,
he ran right past the ball. I am surprised that people are surprised he got rubbed out. I really. He clearly made contact with the head. He ran past the ball and he got off the ground. I think consistently that sort of behaviour has resulted in a suspension.
Well, I mean, we're looking at as Carlton people, we're looking at Eddie Betts getting 3 weeks down from 5 if he took the guilty plea, which he did, for an incident which we're now comparing to Sharad Wellingham's hit on
Kate Simpson.
Thank you, Kate Simpson last year, where he got a very similar penalty, and it seems to be the tribunal is basing it on intent. Well, not intent, but impact.
Well, and I think probably the thing that mitigates for Kelly is that it didn't look like he got Goddard all that hard.
Well, Goddard says on Twitter that his recollection of the incident, that there was no high contact, it wasn't forceful enough to remember at the time. So, I mean, that's how impressive it was.
That's old tribunal code, isn't it?
Well,
no, I didn't see anything, didn't feel a thing.
Yeah, well, he says, he goes on to say, that's not lying, by the way. I didn't study the footage because I didn't want to question my thinking about the incident at the time. So he honestly appears to believe that it wasn't that bad. There's a lot of people that have had input into it. Cameron Mooney's asked how Lindsay Thomas got off, but Kelly got 2. Dermot Brereton's had his say. I mean, everyone, and only KB appears to believe that it's a hysterical response. So, You know,
I do think it's crisis of the week. I do think it's a bit of crisis of the week.
I think they've been umpiring like that for months or for years.
Yeah, look,
It used to be incredibly frustrating watching Carlton play on a Friday night and having a different rule interpretation from the week before. It was like they were experimenting on us. It used to annoy the crap out of me.
Enjoy your work, 2 weeks off, James.
Yeah, so he's going to have a bit of a holiday. Eddie's going to get 3 weeks off to, I don't know, we were saying, well, ODM was saying earlier on the Carlton cast that it was kind of ironic that Eddie comes back from having 3 weeks off with a broken jaw to getting 3 weeks off for dealing a broken jaw, so...
Look, who you got the next 3 weeks that he misses out on?
Well, he misses out on what's a pretty crucial game against Port this weekend at Etihad, and then GWS is possibly not such a big deal.
Possibly.
And then, well, you never know these days. I mean, the way we're playing. And then the week after, we have some other team.
Brisbane, I think.
Brisbane, thank you. Yeah, Brisbane at the Gabba. So, they're not necessarily massive games, but I mean, the way we're playing, I wouldn't write anybody off.
They should wins, aren't they?
Yes. Anyway, we'll keep it moving along, lads. And well, Messenger asked to put this on the agenda. So
I did no such thing.
Hey! I recall.
You got the tape right.
I distinctly recall you asking for this. And
I said if we must.
Well, I think we do. I think we do now. So, Adam Goods, is he a cowardly sniper, as Messenger put it?
Now you're just flat out lying.
No, that's how I recall the conversation going.
I've only just stopped looking sideways watching for Adelaide supporters. Now you're going to have bloody Sydney supporters under me.
Well, you know, the 200-odd people that listened to the podcast last week, none of them had anything bad to say about your comments about Adelaide, so I assume, you know, that could be something to do with the internet speed or something over here not being that good. But, yeah, Adam Goods. Brereton made some comments earlier in the week, and so what do we think about that?
Overblown.
Yeah.
A little bit. 326 games, and he said he's known for a few of these incidents. It's pretty much just like Justin Fletcher and his tripping. You know, you break it out once in a blue moon and becomes what he's all about.
I think Brereton's concern was that he was aiming for the feet more than the ball half the time.
Well, look, I think you should deal in the things that actually happen rather than those that haven't. But I find it jarring to see an AFL footballer go into a contest feet first. You don't see it very often, and it's clearly a very dangerous practice. Now, is it worth charging you? I mean, if the worst thing he's done is he's tripped Gibson in this instance. But is that still a reportable offence? Tripping?
Well, of course it is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's tripped him. I mean, Gibson didn't even get a free kick.
There's a whole stack of rules that are meant to be against that whole going in at the feet and stuff like that now. So,
look, he didn't go in. They didn't hit each other directly. Say,
maybe that's
a la Goods and Surgeon, or what was the one with Lindsay Thomas and the young Sydney kid Gary Rowan?
Yeah.
So it wasn't quite that severe, but feet. I mean, I don't understand the mentality of going in feet first for a contest like that.
Well, I think that's what they're saying. They're saying it's he's doing it self-preservation mode. So he's trying to play the ball, but he doesn't want to put himself on the line. So he's going in whatever way he can that will protect himself more. So that's where the whole issue, Brereton's issues, come up.
So
I wonder though, you go in head first and you get a free kick against you these days. I suppose why wouldn't you go in feet first if you're going to do it at all?
I mean, the idea is to protect the legs, isn't it? You're trying to protect. So it should be body contact against the legs. I thought that's how the umpires have been calling it.
Look, I think these days with the sliding rule and with the, you know, you can't lead with the feet and you can't do any of this stuff. So I think what happens is whoever gets to the ball first, they stop, have a conversation who got there first. A written invitation goes out for one person to pick it up, and they play on from there. But that's pretty much where we're heading, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's got a fair bit of evolution to go. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you just can't cop it when a player who's generally going for the footy gets the footy and happens to slide in, or a player comes in after that and there's a tap on the legs and it's a free kick. I mean, what's to go with that?
Yeah.
I would argue Goods had another option open available to him, and that was to stay on his feet and keep running.
And
I don't
haven't
see
seen the
his
incident
options
myself.
were either to
but,
go in feet first or to go in head first. He had the option to keep running. Now, whether Gibson would have inevitably beaten him or not, or whether Dio would have shepherded him off, I don't know, but he still had the option to stay standing.
Yeah, no, Gibson was going to get to that ball first, so he was trying to get a sneaky little one in front of him to get the ball out of his path. I think it was just one of those typical.
It's not a new part of Goods' game, though. I mean, he has been doing this on and off over a fair while.
And that's the only part of what Brereton said that sticks, is that he's got form in this regard, and he did injure. I think some of the Port supporters were pointing out that he did injure Jacob Surgeon, perhaps not to the degree that Gary Rowan was injured, but he did. Surgeon's career wasn't the same afterwards. But I'm not sure that Coward is quite a charge that sticks.
So we're ruling this as hyperbole.
Oh, look, again, I think last week I wanted Carlton to lose the tag of the most unethical club to Essendon, so I'm trying to stick up for Bryce Gibbs. So if we can make something stick on Goods instead, we'll go that way, hey?
And let's be honest, hyperbole is the best thing ever in the history of the world.
All right, guys. Looking over the weekend, I see Hawthorn have got GWS. There'll be a close one for you, Messenger.
Well, I think the conjecture now on the Hawthorn board is how many players get rested, or do you play that card of putting people in cotton wool? Hawthorn, having played the 2012 finalists 7 games in a row, now have GWS, Gold Coast and Melbourne end on end for 3 weeks before the bye. And so I guess there's a feeling that there's an opportunity to perhaps give some young guys a rest, bring some others through that perhaps need a game. But there's the don't flirt with form school of thought, of which I must admit I'm one. And there's the wrap them up, it doesn't matter, we'll get it done anyway school of thought. So that's really where the thinking is of the Hawthorn board now. But it's in Tassie too, so the Launcestonians get another fine quality football match shown before them.
Yes. And Higgs, for you, mate. Richmond this weekend at the MCG?
10 goals, 20 goals, how much will we go down by? Look, I must say, typically what happens in a season with a team, even as bad as Melbourne, is that you get these unexpected victories. And I think the Tigers are the sort of team that could let one, could let one slip. So I seem to have a little sneaky feeling about it, but having said that, we'll probably go down by 20 goals.
And ODN, Port Adelaide at Etihad?
Yeah, Port Adelaide at Etihad. We've discussed that in our previous podcast. So I'd like to switch to what I'm looking forward to the most is the Collingwood versus Geelong game.
Yep.
Just notably, Geelong I think they're 8-5 over Collingwood since 2007, but 7 out of 7 in those odd flag years. So when they're on a roll and they look like they're heading towards potentially one of those odd flag years, they're 7 out of 7 against Collingwood. So Collingwood usually do fairly well, but the omens are good for Geelong, and I'm really looking forward to that one.
I think Swans and Freo looks pretty good on Saturday night as well at SCG, 5th versus 6th. Could be the match of the round.
Could be. I still think there aren't too many teams that Sydney are going to lower their colours to. I mean, I watched them up close last night, but they're a very well drilled unit. They're very experienced, and I think they're going to beat Fremantle. I don't think Fremantle travel very well still.
Might say they're well suited to professional football.
Yes, they are very well suited to professional football. I would say there is a sneaky game, the game there that has a lot of significance. I think it's going to slip under the radar, but Gold Coast host the Western Bulldogs this week.
Yes.
I'll be going to that game.
Chance to go 4-4.
4-4, and more significantly, the Western Bulldogs, if they go down, will be 1-7.
Well, no one could expect Gold Coast to stay down forever. They had to start coming up at some point. and you can only beat the teams you play against. They were never going to beat the top teams this year, but they are beating the teams they're expected to at the moment.
Yeah.
I still think they've got a better victory in them than they've already produced. I don't mind them there. I don't mind them at all. I don't know that long term they're going to be a better team than GWS in, say, 3 or 4 seasons, but they've got the potential to knock off a reasonably good football team at some stage this year.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, guys, thanks very much for your participation this evening. Higgs, especially for your contribution in the discussion about Melbourne.
Very welcome.
I feel like sending you flowers, Higgs.
Yeah, so
Look, anything to lift my spirits, please.
it wasn't the most uplifting of segments, but I think we got an insight into the Melbourne mind, which we wouldn't have otherwise got. Messenger, as always, thank you very much for your contribution this evening.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
And you might want to watch out for Sydney people
Yes.
over the next week.
If Sydney fans are looking for me, I live in Brisbane. I have reddish hair.
Oh dear. And ODN, as always, a pleasure to have you on again.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And Chief has already left the building earlier in the cast. I've been the Wookie. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We hope you have a good weekend. Good luck to everyone, whatever team you support, and may the best Carlton side win.